Alrighty, we're ready to put the diaphragm back on. And just as I said before, remember, to get these off, you don't want to cut this ring when you do your clippers. And you clip that plastic ring, just don't hit this metal piece. And what we want to do is we're going to put super glue on this, around this ring, but do not get super glue on this. And if you do get super glue on that, don't sand it. Use some kind of super glue remover, but do not scratch this surface with any kind of a sandpaper if you get glue on here. And the way I put this on, there shouldn't be any glue on here. And do not get any glue on this rubber. Only get the glue around this ring, you know, in the inside here. Do not get glue anywhere on this part. It is not good. One thing I'm going to talk about this needle, if you look inside here, there'll be 2 screws. And if you look in here, there'll be a hole at the top. Okay. And of course, that'll be the big hole at the top and a small hole at the bottom. Inside here, there's a spring. There's that little plate. There's a spring under there, and there's a little plastic piece that goes on this needle. And if I have to do a needle change, the only thing I'm looking for is wear and tear, and just wear marks on this needle. This needle's good. So I'm not going to change it out, but if you do have to change the needle out, you'll pop these 2 screws out, and there'll be a small spring in there and a piece of plastic that goes on the top of this needle. Now I'll just explain it, or I can draw a picture, either way, but once you see it, there's this little small hole right here. There's a plastic ring that goes on top of this needle, and it'll have a little slot, little stubby thing that'll fit in that slot. So when you drop this needle back down in, you'll just spin it and you'll feel it get into place. Once you feel it drop into place, you'll hold this needle tight so it can't move. And then you'll put your plate on, your spring in, put the plate back in, and just tighten it back down. But this needle's good, and I shouldn't have to replace it. And all we're looking for is make sure it's springy. If you push it back, make sure it springs back forward. If it don't spring back, then we'll have to pull this apart. But right now, it's in pretty good shape. So, and I've already took a rag and I wiped this down. You don't want any oil on here, any oil or gasoline. And a couple of other things I need to talk about. Once this diaphragm goes on, okay, and it sets in the carburetor, this is the front of the carburetor, and this is the back. Okay, and you'll see the front of the carburetor will have this little ring here for your intake boots. The inside of this carb, remember, it has a big hole at the top. That hole is going to go forward. Okay, and it'll set in there just like this. The open hole will be facing forward. And if you look right here, you'll see the little half moon shape. Okay, that half moon is what you're looking for. Okay. Another thing I need to talk about is gasoline on this rubber. Now, a friend of mine, he laid his bike down, and I know he's the one that rebuilt the carburetors, not on this particular one, but on his bike. He laid the bike over, and he says when he was riding, after he got the bike upright, it wouldn't idle right. It kept it just wouldn't work right. And what happens is this little hole right here, you see this little hole right here, that's a vent hole for the inside of this. And sometimes, and also in the top of this, when this thing fills up with gasoline, when it tilts over, you'll get gasoline inside this bowl right here. And when gasoline hits this, it will swell up. And when it swells up, it will not seat on this. So that's why I super glue them down. Every bike, I'm not going to say every bike tips over, but yeah, it's going to tip over more than you'd like, put it that way. So what I do is I super glue these down. If the bike tips over and gasoline does seep through the carb and get on this, it won't affect it. Or if it does affect it, you can always take these off and put new super glue down. But once these swell up with gasoline and gasoline gets on here, it will not shrink back down. It won't do it. A lot of times, sometimes you're just going to have to buy new ones and put on there. That's just the way it is. It's just the way rubber and gasoline react to each other. And another thing I was going to tell you, now this is the BS34SS, and it is the 70, and I did go look at my paperwork. It is the M70, and this is the BS34SS. Now, even though this is a BS33 carburetor, this diaphragm is still the same. It's the diameters that we need in here. And now here's another problem you're going to have. I'm going to give you a part list too. Now this is a 3/4 socket that I use when I put all this back together. And what happens is you have your carburetor facing forward. Let me get a better angle on my camera. Okay, this is facing forward. And when we put this back together, we want that hole, the open hole at the top. Okay, so now we have the open hole at the top facing forward. Well, in the old diaphragms, you'll see this little tab right here. When they at the factory, when they lock that down, that diaphragm is in a specific spot to where this is perfectly straight. See, like how this thing will spin inside here. Well, when you take the old diaphragm off, you lose that tab. This is perfectly round when it sets in here. You see, when we set this in here, it's perfectly round. Alright? And you can still see the old tab hole, the old tab spot right here. Well, since there's no way to get the diameter to face forward in the perfect alignment, what I use is I take my 3/4 socket, and I'll put this in here, and I'll put my 3/4 socket in here, and this is what helps me to align it. I don't know if you can see that or not, but inside, let me get a flashlight, maybe shine down in there better. See how it sits inside there? This socket holds the diaphragm here in place, and it keeps it in line. There's no room for it to move around. So when I lock this down, I put that socket in there, and that it fits perfectly with that half moon on here. It keeps this straight forward, okay? Because like I say, there's no way to align it now, because when we take the original off, that alignment tab's missing, because this thing is perfectly round. It doesn't have a tab on it. So I'll put the socket in there to keep that in line. And you can see it's almost like a perfect fit right here. And it works for me, and this is how I do it. Okay? So let me grab my glue. We're going to use a rubber glove. You do not want to get this on your hands. That stuff stinks. Okay. You don't want any gasoline or oil on your fingers, so I usually just kind of make sure my fingers are dry. Okay. Now, when we put this on, now some people do align it like maybe the 70 facing forward. Some people do the numbers facing forward. I don't worry about how that goes on, because I align it with my my socket. So this is going to go in from the top. Do not do it from the bottom. You do it from the top. We're going to stretch this over. Okay, so it fits on. Now we're going to bend this down. We're just going to push it through just to the edge of that ring. Right there. Oop, go back. Just to the edge. Because when we push this forward, it's going to slide into place, and you've only got a few seconds to get that lined up. So we want to just sit right there. Okay. So now what I do is I'm going to hold this right here so I don't get any glue on this. Or if you want to put a rag over this, that's fine too. I just use my hand here. You don't want to get any glue on this rubber other than this ring right here. Okay. So let's do this, see what it does. I'll try to do this in the camera and do this at the same time. Like I say, I use this gel because it doesn't run. Oh, okay. So here we go. We're just going to set it in there. We're going to spin it. Don't get any glue on that rubber. Just have to see how it kind of wants to flare up. You just want to hold it down. Get off me, fly. Just kind of smooth it around. Okay. Do not get any glue on that rubber. Okay. Okay, so we're still good. Now, push this back just a little bit right there. Okay. Wipe off the excess. Make sure there's no glue on your fingers when you do this. So we're just going to slide this forward as is. At the same time, we're going to lift up on it. You see how it's kind of goopy right there? That's fine. We're just going to kind of flatten this out a little. Okay. Just kind of work at it and you'll feel it. You'll feel it slide into place. And you can look at the bottom. There'll be a little bit of extra excess glue at the bottom. You can just kind of use your finger and just kind of slide it forward. Just make sure it's seated at the top there. Just kind of slide it forward. Just like that. Now what I do is you can see the excess here. I just kind of leave that alone for right now. Kind of let it set up a little. And it's pretty quick. It'll dry real quick. Okay. You can see the little excess in there. But the problem is we don't want any glue on the inside here in the movable part. I want it all centered right there in that ring. Okay, now I'm going to take my super glue and just use a small bead around here. Just real light. Nothing, don't get excessive with it. You don't want any glue on that rubber. You want it all centered right here. Right in that ring. Just go take your time. That's it. It's going to go quick. It's about 10 seconds. So you give you a little bit to move around, but you can see at the bottom there's a little bit of excess, but we don't want any glue on this shaft. There's a little bit right here you can scrape off with your fingernail. Don't use sandpaper. What I do is I try to take it off my fingernail first because I want this smooth as possible. It has to be smooth as glass. I don't feel anything on there. You can feel it, but if you do get glue on here and use glue remover, don't get glue remover on this rubber. Okay, that's good. Alright, so now we're just going to bend this back down. Do not get any, actually I'm going to leave it the way it is. I'm going to let it dry like that. Matter of fact, I'm going to set it in here. Let it dry, just like that. And I'll be back in about 10 minutes. Okay. Alrighty, we're back on. We let our time pass. We let our glue set up. The only thing we're going to do is we're just going to inspect it. Make sure there's no glue anywhere on this walls of this thing. Just make sure that it's on that ring. We got a good seal here. We got a good seal down here. If by chance you have glue on your thing here, usually you can just take your fingernail and kind of scratch it off. Do not use sandpaper. And if you do use like a super glue remover, do not get it on this rubber. Don't do it. So right now you can just use your finger and just feel if there's anything. You can just kind of use your fingernail to scratch it off. I don't feel anything on here. This thing has to be perfectly smooth. Okay. Now, there again, like I say, I'm going to show you where that hole is right here. Look down right inside here, you'll see a bottom hole. It'll be blank. It'll be closed off. The top hole will be open. You can see the light shining through there. See the light coming through, okay? That is the your air hole to let air inside this thing, okay? That faces forward of the engine. That faces toward the engine. So since this is the toward the engine, this is how it's going to go in. You want the open hole facing forward. All right. Adjust my camera up a little. Give you a little bit better view. The open hole facing the engine. All right. Now, there again, if you see this little tab right here, the factory tab is gone. This is perfectly round. So the only way that we can align this is we're going to put a, this is a Mastercraft 3/4 socket, and it's a perfect fit inside here. And this is going to help us align it. When you push down on this, you know, it'll move a little, but it'll help me keep that in line when I put the cap on. So what we're going to do is we're going to bend this down. You can either do it now or you can take it out and bend it down either way. It's up to you. And all we're going to do is we're going to seat this in here. It'll look like this. Well, cap fell out, but that's okay. We're just going to kind of bend this down, all right, to where this is going to seat. Now, if you see it moves around a little bit, what we're going to do is we're just going to take this cap. Grab my cap. All right, you're just going to smash this down. A lot of times you'll hear a click where it clicks into place, and what that is on the back side of this rubber, there's a little lip right here. I don't know if the camera will show it, but right there you'll see this lip. There's a little lip right here, and if you look inside your carburetor, you see the lip right here, and we want that to be a good seat right here. All right. Scoot this camera back a little. Kind of get a wide view. Okay, so we're going to have this the open hole facing forward. And what I do is you can drop this down before you put it in. You can just work it however you want to. When you put this in, sometimes you just have to work at it, but it's up to you. It don't matter. There's no set way to do it, other than the socket has to be in there because it helps me align this half moon right here. Because sometimes if you don't do the super glue, this thing will migrate around, and what happens is if that spins, it throws off your vacuums on all your carburetors. And so that's why I do it that way. So we want the the open hole facing forward. We're going to put our socket in there to help align it. And you're going to put pressure on it. You know, you can just use your finger, just finger tight, just push it down so it doesn't move. You can see it. It'll wiggle a little bit, but it keeps it in line when we put the cap on. This is just how I do it. And then I'll face it this way so we can see it. I'm just going to fold this down and just work at it. It's going to be like a halfway point, and then we're just going to kind of feed it down in the middle, kind of push it down. Okay, starting to seat. Make sure this is, you got your good alignments. It's seated in. We're just going to take our cap, smash it down in there. A lot of times you'll hear a click where it seats down in there on that lip. As long as we got a good seat here. Lift the cap up a little bit and just make sure it's smashed down in there. And you can feel it. You can just use your finger and feel it. It feels good. All right, it's lipped in there. So we're just going to do a quick turn here. Make sure it's seated good. I'm going to put my cap back on. Smash it in. Okay, so that's good. Now we're just going to put our spring in here. And if you look in the inside of this cap, there's a little spot where that spring goes. You can either put the spring in first, put this in, or you can put the spring in here first and then put it in. It's up to you. It doesn't matter. You can just look in here off to the side, make sure it hits that spot. Okay, and did you hear that click? That was that lip locking in, that little click. We're just going to take one screw, set it in. Let's get it started. This is where I have trouble sometimes. My fingers don't want to work. Okay. And I'm going to make this one kind of tight because I don't want that cap to come off. I'll just do 2 screws for now. I'll still keep pressure on here in case that cap moves. I don't want it moving. Okay, that's pretty snug. Not tight, but snug. We'll do the tightening in a minute. Okay, we're going to put the other screws in. Food for thought. Now some of these screws are short and some are long. If you have to mix and match, try to put these short screws in the back. I just grabbed them because if you put the long screw in, sometimes it'll hit right here. So if you can, try to make sure the shorts are in the back. If you can see this one, you can see where it's sticking through where I used a long one. I'll take that one out. I just wanted to get that cap on, get it locked down. I can mess with these later, but if you can see, now it's not touching, but it's close. So I always use the short screws in the back. Now, like I say, I just did that to get the cap on. I can always move these later. So now that I have the short one, I'll go ahead and put it in this back one here. But if you have too long of a bolt, what it does, it'll hit that and it'll crack it. So I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but these long ones do have a little bit of a gap. You just don't want that screw touching anything in here. Even though these are long, they're not touching, and I'm okay. But if you can, next time I'll use a little shorter one. That'll come out. And if you can see right now, that's perfectly aligned. All right. And how we're going to test this, there's a little, this little half moon right here. We're just going to put our thumb over that, and we're just going to lift up and should be able to feel air pressure. This shouldn't be able to come up. You don't jam it up there because it'll, you could pop it, but if you can see it just rides slowly down. See? And when you hit the bottom, you can hear a little bit of a metal on metal. Hear that? And you can even hear it sucking air. All right, but to test these, all you do is you put your thumb over that, and you just kind of just use your finger and kind of move it, and you can see it. You'll feel the air pressure on that. Now, what we do is, since there's you got your little big hole facing forward, and I'll show this down where you can see it. Before I do it, I always just double check that is the big hole facing forward. That is the big hole facing forward. You see it slowly coming down. And that is a 100% clean build. And that's a good vacuum seal too. And that is okay, and another way you can test it is you go ahead and push this all the way up to the top, real slow. Don't do it quick. Just real slow. Then put your thumb over that and watch this. It should come down real slow. See it coming down real slow? Now this one I'm going to do halfway, and it should come down quick. You'll hear it. So that's a 100% perfectly good built carburetor. That is good to go on your machine. Alrighty, let's get the rest of these racks put back together. One thing I want to show you, since this is looking at the front of the bike, at your front tire, looking at the motor, looking down, facing forward. This is the I call this the #1 carburetor. Okay. Some people put a little scratch right here. They'll scratch a number 1 in here. If you want to do that, that's fine. Or you can use a marker, put number 1 right here. It's up to you. Always, like I say, I always do one carburetor at a time, so I know which ones I've got. So, but if you can scratch a number 1. You know, put a number 1 here somewhere. It's up to you. But anyway, it's good. All right, now I do want to show you one thing. Inside the carburetor kits, inside the Chinese-made carburetor kits, are these little O-rings here. Always replace your O-rings. This is your air tube. It'll fit right in here. See, it just snaps in place. You'll feel the O-ring. It'll be tight, and if it's not tight, change your O-rings. Or there's another method you can do is use Teflon tape. You take the O-ring off, Teflon tape it 2 or 3 wraps, put your O-ring back on, and then you stick it back down on there. And it's the same for the these fuel tubes, because sometimes in the Chinese kits, these O-rings aren't big enough to seal off this spot right here. They'll just slide right in. Now when you put this in, you can feel it if it's tight or not. This particular one's fairly tight as it goes in, so it's not going to leak. But I have done some where I have put them back together and they will leak out of here because they're just not tight enough. So what I do is you go ahead and take these O-rings off, and you'll wrap this with Teflon tape. 3 wraps, 1, 2, 3. And you'll make it real tight as you can, and then you're going to put these O-rings back on here, and so it'll fit in there tight. These O-rings will swell up a little bit in the gasoline. So that one's, you always check these. Of course, you can take your next carburetor, which would be this one, and check its side and make sure it does the same. That's a good fit right there. That side's a little loose, but it's going to go in this side, and that side's tight, so that's a good fit. But just remember, you can always use Teflon tape, but if you use Teflon tape, take these off, wrap your Teflon tape around, and then put your O-rings back on, and then fit them in. That's a simple trick. You know, it's easy to do. All right. And another reason I like these aftermarkets is on the factory fuel tube. Of course, you know it's a rubber over. It's like a rubber over aluminum. And when your these factory fuel tubes run out, you can't rebuild them. Whereas this thing has O-rings, and you can always take these off and rebuild them because they come with the kit. And that's why I like using these. Just 2 O-rings, but if the factory one fails, you have to throw them away and get another one. If you use these aftermarkets, when these O-rings fail, you just replace them and move on. That's why I like using these to rebuild with. All right, I'm gonna put it on pause, and then we'll get this rack put back together. It's good to go.